You.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the great introduction, Julie, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm really happy that I made the trip to be here. It's my second FTE, and it's really exciting and amazing. It's not the same like the last one. It's all new people, so I'm really excited to meet everyone. And thank you to Julie for inviting us all and for having the sustainability topic in your heart, Julie, from all the aspects, from the environmental, the economic, and the social aspect of sustainability. So the idea, with many discussions that we had with Julie during the year, and I've been also to Greece in the summer and visited the Kia Valley, which is a baby of Julie and the team. It was sustainability is always an aspect of all the topics that we have discussed so far. So Julie proposed to have this panel today, which is great because I think we have exactly the right people to discuss about this very trendy but also very important topic which affects everybody in all aspects of our lives, personal or business-wise. So I will start with a general question for everyone. So what is sustainability? What is the definition of sustainability? Or what do you understand when we say sustainability? Anybody wants to, yeah.
Maybe create a world that we can live for a long time.
Yes.
We can be friends with the world.
Exactly, great, yes. That's sustainability. Anything else? Anybody else has to add?
Something that can be survived long.
Mm-hmm. So the textbook definition of sustainability is to live harmoniously in the present without compromising the resources for the future generations. So basically, we can live in this world. The nature is ours. We're living. We're doing all our businesses every day, but not to compromise the resources for the future generations, because we need to leave the earth on the same state or even better than we found it. So this is the concept of sustainability. So when we talk about climate change, is the destruction that industrialization have a cause to this planet, and we are all suffering the results. So I'm not going to take more time because we have a lot of views to hear today. We have with us David Nichols, who is there. David is a transformational speaker, author, investor, and producer, multitasking and with a great profile. I was really impressed reading it yesterday. We have Edward, which is the founder and CEO of BPN Capital Group, but not only that. We have Theo Ratliff, former NBA player, but also businessman as well. So he's going to share his views also. We have Rajan. Obviously, we heard him with the innovation and on the battery side. And we have Martin, which is the Spectrum Alchemy founder and CEO. And also we have Paul Howard. Yes, Paul Howard.
Greg Stace.
And
Greg Stace.
Greg.
Stace.
Hi, Greg. You're not on my list, but yeah, welcome. So we'll and myself, yeah. I'm Maria Flouda, so I'm looking forward to meeting everyone later. So we'll start with David. And David, you have multi businesses, and you are doing impact investments and addressing the climate, but also the social aspect of sustainability. So what is the primary challenges you face as an investor when evaluating the potential for sustainably focused startups and initiatives?
Well, I would say one to begin with is clarity. I have lost count of how many times I have people approach me with a business that isn't really a business. So especially when it comes to the sustainability space. That's what we're talking, but I'm in other sectors as well. But when I see it most, it seems it's in sustainability or impact-related projects. So having that clarity, especially if it's an earlier stage founder, they're not going to get past the really early stages if they don't have that clarity. But so number one challenge would be knowing, what is their business model and how is it profitable while merging with that purpose of being sustainable, whether that's green energy, climate tech, or anything else. I would say some other challenges in evaluating companies are the standard ones you find in investing in any company. Is the founder credible? Do they have a good model? What are the things like we spoke a little earlier? We heard talk about governments and perhaps legal challenges of outlawing certain things that may be in the supply chain. So are there certain ramifications that governments are going to bring about? Now, governments don't always solve problems. So that's why as an investor, I like companies that solve problems. But entrepreneurs by nature solve those problems. And yes, we do need governments to be involved in sustainability issues, but those policies need to be things that help, not hinder innovation. And those things can be things like R&D tax credits. The amount of benefits that come from research and development in the long term, you don't see that until years down the line, but they are often tremendous. And then, of course, looking at any company as an investor, you need to take into account what are the risks in that overall market. Like if I were going to say, look at a renewable energy project, for example, something that I think does not get talked about often is how for that project might be 30 years, that it's going to be in that given location. And unlike, say, a startup company that could maybe move location, what is the long-term climate effect going to be on that project? Is that project in a place where it could even exist 30 years from now? So that's something I think, people don't necessarily consider and look at those, those factors. I mean, it would depend on the type of business, of course, in that regard. And so I think that's something that does not get talked about. I would say also to go back to really a big thing is, especially the earlier the stage, where is the clarity, what is the purpose, and can that merge with a profit in its business model?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David. So there is a lot of preparation to be done by startups when they are pitching or when they're preparing their presentations in order to have a clear understanding of how they're addressing sustainability, even though the company must probably offering a climate solution, but also within their operations, what they're doing about sustainability and also what's their long-term model on that. And moving on, I would like to ask Edward, what are some of the most promising innovative models in climate financing that you've seen emerge in the EU, but also globally as well?
Yeah, so necessarily in the EU, I'll say there is a current product that's called a lockbox. It's offered by about 2 to 3 firms in the EU. The only challenge with that product is that they only touch projects that need above 100 million. And the beautiful thing of that is that their terms are very favorable. They're not looking at, is your model, we're going to cut off your head and charge you whatever the market rate is. They're looking at, is your model sustainable, as David was saying, and they're looking for long-term partners. So if you have a sustainable project in the EU, and this company actually works worldwide, many of these groups work worldwide. If it's sustainable enough to last and through the future, then that means that they will be your long-term player. And they can finance your first round, let's say 100, 200, 500 million. And then next time you need money again, instead of you not knowing where to go, you have where to go. Mm-hmm. Now, in the US, there is an incentive that's run by the government that doesn't get talked a lot. And this is something that would be very, very beneficial for you. It's a program that's called PACE. I took advantage of it mainly in the early 2012, 2013. And it's a sustainability program. And what they do is they have allowed banks to be able to get into the business of, let's say you're developing, and this can apply to anything. Let's say you're developing a high rise. and you can actually go ahead and apply for a PACE loan up to 20 to 30% of what it's going to cost to develop the high rise. Now, what do you have to do to comply to be able to get that? It's a loan, okay? Don't get it twisted. They want you to pay it back. It's just going to be at a fair market rate, and they want you to build with sustainability in mind, right? So imagine if you're starting a project and you already have 20 to 30% of what you need because you know how to do it and you know how to apply for it, then that gives you the upside of, I don't need to go out and run for the first 20 or 30% of what I need to develop my project, right? Now, with that said, that project is the other benefit, and one of the other main benefits is it becomes a tax lien, right? After you finish the first round, it's a 25 to 30-year tax lien. So let's say you sell your company 5 years from now, you don't have to pay it back. Whoever buys your company now inherits the debt, and it's a tax lien, right? So what that does is also it opens doors to the entrepreneur to be able to not feel suffocated on, I just took all of this debt and I got to now find out where the money is going to come to pay for it. Well, since it's amortized for 25 to 30 years and it's a tax lien, there's a lot more flexibility. FYI, in the US, the only negative with it is big banks don't quite understand it. And it's tough for them to lend when you have that structure. Like if you need more debt and you don't have someone that can take you by the hand, I've done maybe close to 900 million worth of PACE, right? So if you don't have someone to take you by the hand with the bank will tell you, if you take PACE, we'll not lend you money. Because in their heads, PACE takes first lien position on all of your assets because it's a tax lien. What they don't understand is PACE only accounts for 20 to 30% of what you're developing, whatever that is. And you're still paying taxes regardless. So taxes will have a first lien position on any debt whatsoever. And you have to walk them through that. And it's a matching and it's a dancing battle between the establishment of banking and then obviously if you want to be able to use this tool, which is very beneficial if you ask me, to start any project this way.
Thank you, Edward.
You're welcome.
So from what you said, we know that there's a lot of climate financing going around, and also there is incentives from financial institutions as well to lend money to companies who have green projects. So
the main challenge with financial institutions is that they publicly say that, right?
yes.
Perfect. But then you go in, you show them the project, and they have a guy similar to me. I'm a quantitative risk analyst. And then what that someone's going to do is they're going to run their numbers, right? And we have to analyze the risk within behind the project. And then when I looked at it, I'm like, okay, it's a great project, be able to move forward. But then you also given guidelines by the fund or the financial institutions. And the financial institutions will give you boxes that if those guidelines are not met, you could have the best project in the world, but you're not going to get that finance. Okay? So again, they're very good at publicly saying, yes, we are for sustainability. We want to make the world a better place. But that's not necessarily all true. Right? Because at the end of the day, they still have their guidelines that need to be followed.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, and again, you don't get, it's not like you're going to apply for a loan and tell the financial institution, let me talk to your risk team. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yes,
Unfortunately.
But also creating awareness also from the financial institution perspective, creating awareness about what is the criteria before you apply for a project like this would make also sense. So if a company apply, at least they know before they go that they tick all the boxes, because otherwise it's...
so it was David was saying.
Yeah.
90% of the time, anytime a startup starts, they are so hyped on what they're doing sometimes that they miss a lot of the finite points that you need to be able to get finance,
Yeah.
right? And then, unfortunately, it's sad because it shouldn't be that way. But in finance, if you go to a group and you apply and get denied, and you now have to disclose that to the next group you apply, right? Now, the next group you apply to is not gonna go ahead. You fix all of the mistakes that the other one gave you, right? But this one has a totally different set of guidelines. And not only that, just because you got denied by the first group, now they look at you like there's something wrong because you got denied by the other group,
Yes.
right? So it's, unfortunately, the game is not fair, right? It should be that if you got denied, if you ask me, it should be that if you got denied by group number one, let's tackle why you got denied.
Yeah.
Do you fix those problems? Do you answer? Okay, perfect. Boom, boom, boom. Now let's make sure you can meet my guidelines as well, and let's move forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Edward. Thank you so much. We're going to move to Theo and change a little bit the topic of the financing. So, Theo, we want to hear from you. You've been so many years in the sport industry, and we want to hear what is the situation in the sport industry around sustainability. What is the current state?
I know with the NBA, they have a big initiative on green technology, solar energy, things of that nature, and also carbon offset carbon credits and recycling. I mean, a big community push is creating the zero carbon initiative. In that opportunity with me. Having the opportunity to play 16 years, and I served on the executive board for 13 years, sat across from David Stern and all those guys in negotiating contracts. I have the opportunity to take our business, which is Zero Plastica, which is a recycling renewable energy company, to take that to them and be able to possibly bring these recycling plants into all the different NBA cities. So that's something that I envision. And I know when I played and as I learned the game, one of the things that was very key on my success was visualization and understanding, who you're playing against, the opponent that you're playing against, Shaq, Patrick Ewing, all these different guys that were these Hall of Fame guys that you had to go up against. You had to formulate a game plan within your mindset before you even step on the court. And that's kind of what we're doing, with Zero Plastica, to be able to visualize how far and where we can go to continue to build the company.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Theo. That's really exciting. And I think we're going to hear more tomorrow on your venture on the recycling waste management company. And now we're going into Paul. And since we heard a lot of challenges, I think we should focus on the opportunities. And since the Baltic Hydrogen Group is an infrastructure platform for hydrogen, what opportunities do you see in all markets, developed and emerging markets, promoting sustainability and climate-related businesses, Paul?
Thank you. Well, I think just off of the back of David, he made some comments around entrepreneurs being here to solve problems. And, Edward obviously presented that there's still some problems in this industry with financing and how do we get banks which say one thing but then don't finance a project. And so maybe I'll look at those challenges that we have. I'll say that there's probably 3 headline challenges, I think. Risk, infrastructure, and policy would probably be my main 3. And because we're here to offer solutions, I'll just give a bit of background to the problems that we're trying to solve. So risk, firstly, in an emerging market, particularly for example with Baltic Hydrogen Group, we are based in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Relatively emerging markets in the space. If you look at France and Germany, they're much more established. And the risk of going into a new market is that the consumers or the companies and the corporates aren't familiar with what it is that you're doing. There could be political uncertainty. There could be environmental concerns. There could be a lot of risk of going into these emerging markets that you don't have in a Germany or a France. And so what's the solution for that? Well, certainly banks, infrastructure, governments can all help with, for example, membership of the European Union, membership of NATO, using the common currency across Europe. All of these things can help small countries and emerging market countries create a more stable background against that in the face of all of that risk. And I think, for us at least, that's how we're leveraging, the European Union and being based in Europe, I think, as an emerging market country. So that's all very helpful support. And I think if I look at the infrastructure side of the problem, infrastructure, for example, you may not have the services to necessarily take the waste away, or to get clean water, or to perhaps get the components that you need for your batteries or for your hydrogen. But also that presents an opportunity, because effectively it's a virgin greenfield site that you're dealing with. And when you have that, you don't deal necessarily with incumbents. For example, trying to set up a hydrogen company in France, you'll straight away run into the main proponents of the hydrocarbon business, who will be there to, let's say, block your development, or at least maybe not assist with your development as easily. So in an emerging market country, you're dealing with a greenfield site. Excuse the pun. And so that can be helpful. And then thirdly, I think if we look at policy, government policy is critical. One of the problems with that is that it's often established in France or in the UK, for example. And that can hinder the development of renewable companies and sustainability. And the way that we can deal with that, at least in the emerging market countries, again, is look at that as an opportunity. So, for example, we have an executive on our team who advises the government on green policy. Mm-hmm. Hydrogen cars in Latvia are not considered a green car. To get that legislation across Parliament, which we're trying to do this year, requires us to have that mindset of being able to influence policy, and try and change a policy that's already been embedded for 20 years in the UK, for example, would be a very big mountain to climb. And so I think with all of these three challenges that I mentioned, I think there's opportunity in all of the emerging market countries, and that's how entrepreneurs should look at the space.
Thank you, Paul. That was really insightful. I think I will take the microphone to Rajan, because, yeah. So, Rajan, okay, we've heard about all the challenges of the entrepreneurs and startups and what comes with financial institutions, but also with the policy as well. However, from a technology perspective, how is technology and AI being leveraged or will be leveraged to advance all the goals for net zero and climate change?
Yeah, great question. I mean, what I look at as AI is just allowing us to move much faster and make more effective, smart decisions. So like, in our facility here, I heard talking about like one of the major car manufacturers. They had just gotten their testing of their cars for 10 years, and they've been offering 10-year warranties for 10 years. So they've been warranting the car, but have no data to see whether it'll last that long. I mean, that's just very risky, where you're giving a $20,000 battery pack and you don't know if it's going to last 10 years, but you're warranting it. So there are a lot of companies where, if you don't want to test the battery for 10 years, what you could do is you could test it for about maybe a year, and then you could predict its trend line to figure out whether it'll fail or not. And that allows you to move faster and make more effective decisions. I mean, like one example that we do is, think of like baking a cake. You've got these 3 ingredients. As a human, we pick very nice numbers. Like, a cake, maybe I'll have 95%, sugar, 5% X and 5, just nice numbers. But really, what AI can do is really put all the parameters together and make the most cost-effective performance solution where, it's maybe like 93.25 of the ingredient. That's what AI can do. It can really put all those pieces together and make decisions, and then allows you to go test it. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rajan. And we'll go to Martin. So Martin, Spectrum Alchemy is your company that is providing solutions for reducing energy and creating buildings or assets more energy efficient, but also agriculture as well under this.
Yes.
So what is your take on energy efficiency in the race to net zero, and how do you see that sector evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a question that could take the whole day. It's complex at many levels. Just quickly, and I have a presentation later, we're focusing on optimizing energy that we already generate. We waste a tremendous amount of energy. A building could waste half the energy that goes into it. And so that energy could be put to better use. It could go into, for example, the electrification of automobiles, of road transportation, or growing better high quality food in indoor farms. This is energy we already generate and just waste. So I think there's a huge opportunity there, and that's what we're focusing on. If I might deviate a little bit from what I'll call the self-serving side of the answer, I think that most people here may have read the 7 Habits books. One of the habits that I think is really important is first seek to understand. I think that without understanding, you can't get anywhere. No progress happens. In the sustainability, climate change world, there are 2 camps. There are people who the mere mention of any of it will just recoil and reject it. And there are people who are very much for it, and they vilify each other. Nobody wants to understand anyone. So I think that those of us who believe in a cleaner future, a future where we use energy responsibly, and we do the best we can, we need to understand the other side. And that might be really difficult because there's a million different beliefs. What I propose is a very simple concept. The idea that humanity would not have gotten here without burning things for energy. In other words, climate change, CO2 levels going exponential, unavoidable. Nothing from health to cities to industry, our clothes, anything we have would not have happened without burning things for energy, because we had no other technologies. The modern energy technologies depend on advanced semiconductors. That happened what, 40 years ago, 30? Transistors were invented in 50s, 60s. We could not have developed the technologies we can use today to improve our environment 10, 20 years ago. And so in that context, I think that understanding the fact that humanity has this history of having needed to burn stuff to get to where we are, maybe we can develop a framework through which we understand where some of the sentiments come from and maybe work with that and remove the fear factor when people think that they're going to lose their jobs, they're going to lose entire industries, the transition will be negative rather than what it will really be, which is positive. I think that even deniers want to live in clean spaces, right? In clean cities, with energy that doesn't make the sky black. But that first seek to understand element, for some reason, sometimes I feel just isn't there. I don't know exactly how we get there. I sort of think that we need to work on that to be able to bring more people into effectively the teams that are going to help us get there faster than it's happening right now.
Great, thank you, Martin. So it's the only way to go basically is trying to amplify those new energies and ways to retrofit and reduce the energy consumptions and eventually reach zero.
We have to recognize that the tools we need to do that are tools that were just born, just a couple decades ago, 2-3 decades ago. And so being militant about we must do it now puts fear into everyone else, as opposed to, wow, look at this really cool technology. Look at what we can do. And in the next 50 years, slowly we get there. We're going to get there, and just highlight the benefits rather than create that fear factor. Because when I talk to people, that's what I see. People are afraid, and just in general, humans are afraid of change, right? There's economic factors, there's other factors. So I think that if we recognize that the technologies we need are babies, and we sort of relax a little bit about being intense about wanting to push change. We want to push the change, and we have some ideas on how to do it in a more gentle way. I think that we'll get farther faster.
Great. Thank you so much, Martin. And I have one question also for Greg. As we know, I don't know if we all know, but the SDG number 17, the Sustainable Development Goal number 17, talks about collaboration and partnership in order to achieve sustainability. So, and platforms like this is what actually facilitates that process, because we can work on our own, but we cannot achieve anything if we don't come together to discuss and to see what other people are doing and how we can improve, but also how we can collaborate. So I want to have your take on that from a sustainability perspective and about monetizing sustainability, because we all have to make profit as well. We cannot just work for free. So what is your take on platforms like this and collaborations moving forward to achieving the goals?
So I left investment banking here in Zurich about 15 years ago. And I discovered that making money out of sustainability and being good is actually quite hard, especially living in Switzerland. So, and so when you have large teams, the bigger the teams, there's a lot of payroll, there's a lot of things to cover. And so the more people you get involved in sustainability, the more complex it gets, the more that you're focusing on solving people rather than tech. They solve it, but you also get this optimized sizing between small groups, big groups, large groups, the way that the groups interact. And then you get a whole bunch of people stuff. And so rather than talking about the tech, which we all do very well, maybe it's useful to talk about the people side of the whole equation. Mm-hmm. How do you get people to feel inspired and to feel collaborative, connected to each other so that they can change from a hostile environment or a complex to okay, well, let's solve this together. And so one of them, I can't remember, I was thinking, how do you get them to? Maybe give someone a hug and then say, okay, let's talk this out. Change the dynamic of that sort of interaction from a let's say, very strict business here to, okay, let's get together and sit down and say, okay, what have I learned? What are some of the insights? How can we transition? Mm-hmm. And so maybe a people side of sustainability could be a way to look at it. Excellent. And I think Bruce put it very well this morning, though, bringing the heart inside the business, because otherwise things will not happen for a long term anyway. And here we're talking about sustainability, resilience, and about being in the future, not in the present. In the present, we all are, but how to be in the future and how to have a sustainable, successful, and profitable business in the future. And Bruce, you wanted to add something, and then...
I got one idea when Martin was talking, and that's because I've been as I said, advisor to Vestas for 12 years now, and on the board for 5 years, and then I'm also on the strategic advisory board of First Solar, which is by far the largest non-Chinese manufacturer of solar panels, and it's interesting because there we're talking all the time about how can we increase the production of electric power. But you brought it up, how do we minimize the consumption of energy per person? And there I have two comments that very seldom gets any airwaves. And the first one is back to hand in hand. So we've done longitudinal studies during these 20 years of how their businesses go, and 84% are still in business that started anywhere on the timeline during this 20-year period. But one of the things that really warms my heart is that these women do not have more children than we have in America or in Europe. And back to the consumption, 1971, we were 3 billion people on the planet. We're 8 billion now. Mm-hmm. And what is the main driver of energy consumption? People. Mm-hmm. So what do we do about that? And the only reason why, the other women that have not joined the program in these villages have 8 to 10 children instead of 2 to 3 children is because they feel that that's the only securitization when they retire, is that they have kids. Mm. So that's one aspect that just struck me. And then the second one is having lived in Sweden half my life, having lived in America half my life, When you go to a restaurant or the movie theater, in America, you have to put on a sweater. In Sweden, you don't.
Yeah.
So the whole, wasting tons
energy.
of energy. And I remember when I had my first tutorial for joining the board at Vestas, one of the things that stuck in my head from that tutorial was that it takes 3 times more energy to decrease a temperature, so air condition versus heating. So here in America, we freeze to death in every public space,
Yeah.
and we have to. Maybe it's the sweater industry that's driving it. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it's craziness. And then what you're doing is looking at all of the manufacturing processes, and when you lean them out, you should also think about leaning out the energy consumption in every operation. So that those were my 2 comments. So.
Thank you, Bruce. Since we are running out of time, I think one minute of closing comments from each of you. I'll take the microphone back. So the question is, what's your forecast for the next 5 to 10 years regarding sustainability, climate finance, and how is that going to move, and how the entrepreneurs will be moving along with that?
Yeah, I mean, what I look at is for 5-10 years is really looking at the manufacturing innovation. So all these renewable devices, I think you have to give context. I mean, fossil fuels, whether we hate them, they are a very powerful tech. They provide a source of energy. They're fast to transport, and it's abundant source of energy. That in order to really enable true renewable energy for everybody around the world, you have to replace that with the same features. So if we can't build enough batteries so that everyone in the U.S. or in the world can get it, that we're not really achieving the goals that we want to do. So I think it is, those manufacturing innovations that are going to drive the real renewability, because we have to meet the demand, in such a short time. Like, it took 400 years to build fossil fuels, and we have to replace it in 6. Yeah. So we can't do that with building the same factories. We have to innovate, and that's my vision. Vision is building systems that will allow these innovations to foster well.
Thank you.
In the next 5 to 10 years, whether we like it or not, as you alluded to, we are not going to be done with fossil fuels. So we need to do everything we can to help with that transition. I do think in some ways we are further along in the US and the EU on using renewable energy sources, but a lot of the developing nations still aren't even beginning. So I think we will see some mechanism for funding those things in developing nations that is going to need to appear. If somebody's not doing it already, it needs to come about. There's that gap there that to be filled because just because the US and EU deal with those problems in the rest of the world that's developing and has a hungrier energy appetite than they've had before, you still have a problem. So I think that is one thing we'll see. I think we'll see some technologies have reached the maturity where they are more cost effective, like solar and wind in some ways, but the hydrogen in some ways is still somewhat dependent on subsidies. So I think it comes to a point we will see some of those technologies also become more cost effective. So it comes down to increasing cost effectiveness and efficiency in various industries, and as well as new innovations that will come about in other regards for both renewables and climate tech in the next 5 to 10 years.
All right. So on our end, our take is, as I mentioned earlier, I gave you all of the problems that the finance industry has. So as being as a solution-oriented person, and through the group that we currently operate on, their BPN Capital Group, what we're doing and what we foresee in the next 5 to 10 years is we're now sitting in the other side, where we're actually asking groups doing similar to what you're doing to come to us. And even if we're not able to help you directly, we'll guide you through where, because we understand the other side. I sat in the other side for close to 11, 12 years. And the reality is that, yes, I don't think we're going to get rid of fossil fuel in the next 5 to 10 years, but I do believe we're going to get a lot closer. In the panel that Theo, and maybe I joined Theo on it next, that he's going to be talking about, it's Zero Plastic. It's a recycling plant that we've created that is actually to help deviate from using fossil fuel. And literally, we're jumping scale from plants that used to process 5 metric tons of garbage a day to produce energy to 120 metric tons per plant a day to produce energy. And we can scale as much as we want because we have invested in better tech, and it's actually obviously paid off in the larger production. So, quick example, before the plant that was used to convert garbage to
I'm
energy.
sorry, I have to stop you. I need to move.
So, example, tech that used to be able to convert 5 metric tons of garbage to energy, now we have similar plant that can convert 120 metric tons a day to energy. So I think the future is looking bright. You just need to keep working on it.
Thank you, Edward.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Yep. I mean, Edward spoke on it when he talked about the opportunity of exchanging fossil fuel for different type of technologies and energies produced through the recycling. I think that's where we are 5 to 10 years. Like I said, I want to be involved in every city that NBA plays in and have our recycling companies doing exactly what he's saying, being that replacement of the fossil fuel.
Thank you, Theo.
Next 5 to 10 years is about education. I feel that that's the strongest point that can influence policy and drive things, for example, grants and subsidies. The fossil fuel problem that we have can't be solved overnight. We all know that. But for example, with hydrogen gas, we can retrofit cars. We don't need to change the world. BP can use their existing infrastructure in the hydrocarbon industry to be on board with us. Shell, Exxon, all these big companies can. And if we can educate people about a clean fuel, then that solves 40% of the world's carbon output from scratch, and then you deal with the rest of it, in stages like that. But I think education is a very important part of it. To go back to what the panel was saying earlier about understanding the problem, and you can only understand the problem if you discuss it and you educate, and I think that's the future for us.
Just on the other side of the lake there is Insurance Alley. Zurich Re, Swiss Re, and Swiss Life are there. So these are the guys that pay for the planet when big stuff happens. Okay? There's one in Munich as well, and there's Berkshire Hathaway. Big stuff's about to happen. We're going to get some epic storms. These are going to be really big, far more expensive than the cost of transition. The cost of transition is going to be minor compared to the cost of trying to rebuild Miami. Miami has no chance.
Thanks for
Miami's
the positive note.
Yeah, but that's a reality. I mean, let's just face reality. Humanity is not smart enough to be able to solve this. I wouldn't want to live that close to the water there. So I mean, this is the reality. Humanity is not capable of being proactive enough. No way. We're nowhere near enough. We're going to be reactive. And so when this so-called shit hits the fan, and it is, and these guys just over there are the ones that pay for it, what will happen is these insurance companies will stop paying. So in California and in Florida and a whole bunch of places, the insurance companies are leaving. So because we're not going to be doing a structured retreat, because we're just particularly not good at this stuff, this is where the entrepreneur comes in. That's the time. Because when humanity is not smart enough to just be structured about this. BP and Shell did a paper on this 20 years ago. Are we going to be planned or are we going to be panic? And we are right on the panic button. And so the point there is the entrepreneur comes in when the chips are down. That's when you come in and say, I've got a solution, guys. Let's go do it. Before that, we plod along, we create our task, we go do our things, and then you hit the button, and that's when you buy, is when the market's down. So that is the next 5-10 years. Wait for the 2030.
Thank you, Chris.
The power of fear.
After the fear. Once you're in the fear, then you're in. Exactly.
I'll give you a quick metric just to give you a sense of what energy saving could do. We estimate that if we deploy some of the technology we're developing just in commercial buildings, widely deploy in the United States, we can free up enough energy to support 30 million electric vehicles.
Wow.
That's tremendous. You can imagine how many power plants you would have to build to achieve that. And so, referring to what I said before, that is not a threatening proposal to people who have ideas against sustainability or in fear of some of these things. So I think it's an interesting metric. And I'll leave you with a thought, an idea. I often think way outside the box, crazy ideas. One of my thoughts is we actually want petroleum fuels to be as cheap as possible. Free would be great for sustainability projects. Why? Building a large facility, building infrastructure is extremely expensive, among other things, because you need to move lots of stuff with trucks that burn fuel. So if we make the fuel zero cost or very low for those kinds of projects, we can do it faster. And so I don't know policy-wise what that would look like, but I can imagine a situation where we say, look, fuel is basically zero or very low cost if you're using it for these types of projects. Otherwise, it is what it is.
And what do you think is the likability of that?
Again?
What is the likability of that?
Likability?
Yeah, because I applaud it.
I'm not a policy person. I think that if you give that thought to politicians, the first thing they'll think is, I am going to get reelected, and they'll come up with a way to make it palatable to others. Maybe it should be low cost for everyone, lower cost for projects. So you remove pain for the entire population, understanding that we can accelerate a transition if we can basically subsidize projects by making the fuel we need cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy
Thank you
thought.
so much, Martin. And I think we are finished. So thank you so much, everyone.